Welcome to Purple Bell Bottoms with that 70s gal cat. That's me. First I want to point out my little doggy brooch here. This dog reminds me of Eddie Spaghetti from Frasier, one of my favorite shows. That's why I got it. Have you ever watched Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, walk calmly into a room with a wildly out of control dog? And somehow, within minutes, everything changes. The dog settles down, the chaos disappears, and you find yourself thinking, how did he do that? Well, the other day I was watching one of his videos, and suddenly I had a funny thought. What if some of the principles he uses with the dogs applies to raising children? Now, before anybody gets upset, I'm not saying children are dogs. Not even close. But when it comes to leadership, boundaries, and confidence, in creating a calm home environment, there are some surprising similarities. And it got me thinking about how differently many of us were raised back in the 60s and 70s compared to today. If you're a baby boomer or a Gen Xer, I think you're going to recognize a lot of this. So let's take a trip down memory lane. One of Cesar's biggest teachings is simple: rules, boundaries, and limitations. He says dogs feel safer when they know what's expected of them. And honestly, kids do too. Back in the 70s, most of us knew exactly where those boundaries were. We had chores, we had curfews, we had consequences. If your mother said, "Be home when the streetlights come on," you didn't need a written contract, a family meeting, or a text. You knew. And somehow every kid in the neighborhood knew too. I remember entire packs of kids riding all over town with no adults in sight. But everybody knew when it was time to head home. And if you were late, well, let's just say there would be a conversation waiting for you when you got home. Today's kids have freedom in some ways, but not in others. They have phones, tablets, and streaming services, and social media available 24 hours a day. But some families struggle to create consistent boundaries around all of it. And when expectations aren't clear, kids often feel less secure, not more. As Cesar says, leadership isn't about being mean, it's about providing direction. Another thing Cesar talks about a lot is calm, confident energy. One of the most interesting things about watching him is that he doesn't yell. He doesn't panic. He doesn't lose control. The dog may be completely losing his mind, but Cesar remains calm. Children notice that too. Think back to the adults you respected most growing up. Maybe it was your father, maybe it was your mother, or maybe a favorite teacher. Chances are they weren't the loudest person in the room. They were the calmest. They meant what they said and they followed through. As kids, we could sense that confidence. We knew when Mom wasn't bluffing. She didn't need to raise her voice very often. That look was usually enough. You know the one. Every boomer watching this just nodded. Today, many parents are afraid of being thought of as too strict. They're worried about being liked. But leadership isn't about being the most popular person in the room. It's about helping kids become capable adults. One thing Cesar says really stood out to me. He says affection comes after calmness, not before. In other words, calm behavior gets rewarded. And the reward isn't always treats or praise. Sometimes the reward is freedom, less pressure, and more trust. As I thought about that, I realized that that's exactly how many of us were raised. When you proved you were responsible, you got more freedom. You could stay out later, you could borrow the car, you could go somewhere with friends. Trust wasn't automatically given, it was earned. and earning it felt good. It made you proud. Here's another thing many of us remember. Back then, life naturally provided structure. School started at a certain time, dinner started at a certain time, bedtime was bedtime. And believe it or not, television actually signed off for the night. Remember that? The national anthem would play, the screen would go blank, and eventually all you saw was static. The TV literally told you it was time to go to bed. Today's kids live in a world that never shuts off. Entertainment is available 24 hours a day. Messages arrive instantly. The stimulation never ends. That makes structure even more important than when we were growing up. Cesar also teaches that behavior often reflects what's happening underneath. And I think that's true for children too. Sometimes what looks like disrespect is really frustration. What looks like laziness is discouragement. What looks like acting out is a child asking for guidance. Our childhood experiences are important because they shape how we handle stress, conflict, and relationships. Many of us grew up in families where feelings weren't discussed very much. You just kept going. There was strength in that, but there were challenges too. Today we understand more about emotions, but it seems we've swung so far toward understanding feelings that we've forgotten the importance of boundaries. The sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. Compassion and accountability, love and leadership, connection and expectations. And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all. The best parents, grandparents, teachers, and mentors aren't the ones who control people. They're the ones who provide stability. They create an environment where children feel safe to grow. Back in the 60s and 70s, some of that happened naturally because society itself provided more structure. Today we have to be more intentional about creating it. But the principles haven't changed. Children still need guidance. They still need stability. They still need someone who believes in them enough to set expectations. And most of all, they need calm, confident adults who lead with both strength and love. Maybe that's why Cesar Millan's message resonates with so many people. Because whether we're raising a child, mentoring a grandchild, or simply trying to become better human beings ourselves, the formula is surprisingly timeless. Rules, boundaries, limitations, and plenty of love. Now, if you grew up in the 60s and 70s, let me know in the comments. What was one rule in your house that everybody followed? I'd love to hear your story. And remember, children don't need perfect parents. They need steady ones. Thanks for spending time with me today, and until next time, keep those memories alive. Peace out.